At 18, I turned on college with zero experience or degree and got multiple six-figure offers in tech sales. I started working 120K one day after I finished high school, and in 3 months, I was the number one of 30 SDRs in one of the fastest growing startups in the world. By month 5, I became an account executive, still at 18 years old. And since then, through Skip to Sales, I've helped students land roles at companies like acquisition.com at 18 years old. Landing roles from 85K to 120K without any experience and without any degree. So in this video, I'm going to be answering your questions about skipping college into tech sales, and I'm going to do my best to give the most tactical, honest responses so that you can walk away knowing exactly what you need to do. So if you have any other questions, just shoot me a DM on Instagram and let's get into it. I don't know how to stand out. How do I leverage the experience I already have? So feel free to send me a DM because obviously there's only so much I can actually help you with when I don't know what experience you have. But I can tell that you are fundamentally misunderstanding something about getting into tech sales when you're asking me how do I use my experience to stand out. Because most people will think that you need to make your resume a little bit better, you need to revise it 100 times, you need to make a perfect LinkedIn profile so the managers actually look at it, and then you can get an interview. But honestly, you can mass apply to hundreds of companies with a perfect resume, and they're not even going to look at it because AI is going to screen it. And sure, you can optimize it for AI, but I can guarantee you that when there's other people doing more, they're going to stand out. And even then, their experience is going to be more than you when you're this young. And that's exactly why the backdoor application system exists in the first place. To get in from the back door where you don't need to compare with hundreds of people for every single application. And instead, you can just get referrals from people that are already there or just speak with the hiring managers directly. Even if that means that you just need to find their numbers on the internet somewhere and cold call them. Because when you can do that, you're no longer competing with everybody and need to worry about what your resume says because you're actively having a conversation with them. They no longer can just leave you in red or never even open the email in the first place because you're on the other side of the phone talking to them as a human being and you're showing them that you can do it. Because at that point, sure, your experience matters, it definitely does, but what matters a lot more is how you're using it. So I hope that gives you a good idea because generally your experience matters, but what matters a lot more is just getting referrals and just the outreach that you're doing to be able to actually land interviews, showing that you can do the job to get the job, and practicing for every interview a ton. Because it genuinely does take a lot of practice, so make sure to start with companies that you don't care about as much at first, but genuinely just doing outreach and getting good at that can genuinely erase having zero experience because you're showing them that you're doing the job. Because the only reason they're looking for your experience and or even have the whole concept of a resume is to understand how well you can do the job. But when you're literally cold calling them, you're sending them emails, you're getting referrals from people in the company, you're showing them you can do the job. And that's why it allows you to not need to worry about any of that. How much money can you actually make in tech sales? Unlike most types of sales, in tech sales, you have both your base salary and your commission. So even before you get to a point where you're consistently producing, even at the very beginning, you will have your base salary and your commission with that will make your OTE, which is your on target earning. Obviously that will change as you progress in the career. But in the first year as an SDR, as a BDR, your base is going to be anywhere from 50K to 70K and your OTE is going to go from 85 to at its highest, just over 6 figures as an SDR. 6 months to a year and a half later, when you move up from being an SDR, obviously you can be an SDR manager, can make around 150, a little bit more in a year, just under 200 in most cases, or you can become an account executive like most people do, where you're moving from appointment setting to actually closing deals. In that case, obviously your base goes up, but you're also able to make a lot more from commissions because you're closing deals and you have a lot more autonomy over the amount of money that you actually make. Your OTE is pretty much always going to be over 6 figures. It'll go from 120 to 160 that first year. And then as you progress, you close more, you close bigger deals, go to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, eventually millions of dollars, you can make a couple of $1 million a year as an enterprise account executive. And then of course, in any of those roles, you're going to have your standard benefits as you would in anything. But really what I want you to understand is in tech sales, you're able to hit that six figure that everybody talks about very realistically within 1 year. Obviously, that's going to vary depending on the roles they go after. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made is not going after roles with higher OTE and with higher base when I first started, just because I didn't think they'll take me seriously. So I'd apply for roles that were like 75, 80K OTE. But the one that I actually ended up getting was 120K OTE. And I was able to become an account executive in less than 5 months. And that's obviously because I was working a 995, where I got paid more because I just worked a lot more than most people do. Had a couple weeks where I got up to 80-hour weeks, but that doesn't matter. Just by going after roles that have higher OTE, your likelihood of getting a role that has higher OTE where you're actually making more money will go up. And if you have the same amount of interviews and you're getting better at those interviews over time, getting better at outreach, doing everything that I go over in the backdoor application system, you can land those higher paying roles as well, regardless of your experience. What if this isn't the right path for me? So if you've seen a lot of my stuff, you know that I'm a big Alex Hormozi fan. There's a lot of different things, obviously, that I take away, things that I don't take away, but specifically when it came to not going to college, a big reason that I did it is because of consuming a lot of Alex Hormozi content. Specifically, that's why I went into sales too. And in the least gay way possible, I'm very attracted to the way that he makes his decisions. And when Alex Hormozi makes the decisions, I can promise you, you'll never hear him ask, is this the right decision to make? He's going to ask something completely different, and next time when you're torn in between two decisions, I want you to steal his decision-making framework that he used to grow his portfolio to over $350 million a year. So if you've been on the fence between going to college or going into tech sales or just doing anything else, what I want you to ask yourself instead is which way would you regret taking more? Even if it was the worst case possible scenario. Say for example, you went into tech sales, and the worst case possible scenario would then be that you just really suck, or that it's not the right path for you, you want to do something else. And then think about what actually happens. Say it was for 6 months or 4 years, so you're gonna let that ambulance pass? Okay, I think the ambulance passed now, so it should be fine, but would it be for 6 months? Would it be for a year? What would really happen? You get paid to learn one of the most important skills that you'll need for any business, whether it be marketing, starting your own business, or literally doing anything that you're talking to people, and you're getting paid more than most people do after college to learn that skill. And that's in the worst way possible. So if you look at the other way now, where you're in school, you're paying to learn to get a degree that doesn't even guarantee you a job at the end of the day. And I'll be honest, there's just so many different career paths, so many things to do, skills to learn, things to achieve in life. And if you try and focus on finding the perfect path, you're just going to overwhelm yourself and never be able to take that first step. I've tried every way to make money online and nothing ever stuck. Why would this be different? Yeah, so if you've looked into making money online, you've probably came across dropshipping, marketing agency, crypto trading, whatever it might be, maybe high ticket sales. And the reality is that every single one of them can work. In fact, every single one of them works. But there is a reason why none of them have worked for you yet. And it's not even necessarily your fault. It's just that they all have one thing in common. And that's the fact that you're business owners. And that's just the reality. The odds are for businesses, when somebody starts it, that it's going to fail, if not in a few months, then in 2 to 3 years. And especially when you're so young, when you have no experience, no money to put behind it, and only limited time, the reality is that 90% of the businesses will fail, and it's not even necessarily just going to be not putting in the work that you needed to. I've seen multiple people who've tried everything under the sun. I literally named this list from someone who've tried every single one of them and a couple other gigs on the side at the exact same time, and nothing ever stuck, and he genuinely thought that there was something wrong with him. But the reality is that most businesses fail. And that's exactly why I recommend most people who haven't been able to get anything to work yet to get into tech sales instead, because there's something just fundamentally completely different about it. And that's the fact that you're no longer the one owning the business. You're a salesperson. And that means that not only are you getting paid your base salary on top of your commission, so you're a little bit more stable, but you're also still completely dependent on how good you actually perform. And the better you do, the more money you make. You obviously have a ton of room for growth in tech sales, where you can still make multiple $1 million a year when you get to the enterprise level. But you get to genuinely learn the one skill that matters the most, which is generating revenue. You get your 2 to 3 months at the beginning, your ramp period, where they're training you from the ground up. And on top of that, they're going to continue and train you because they want you to succeed. And you don't need to worry about the marketing, about the product, the engineering, the customer support, none of that, because all that you need to do is sell, and that's all they want you to focus on. So you're getting paid to learn a real skill, and you have an entire company backing you behind you, wanting you to succeed. What does the day-to-day actually look like once you're in tech sales? Most people picture cold calling as grinding, headset in a cubicle, soul-crushing work. And that might be the case if you don't know how to pick the right company. But when you genuinely pick a company that you're excited about the team and the culture there, it could not be further from reality. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it's all sunshine and rainbows, but once you're comfortable cold calling and you're doing it with people you genuinely enjoy right next to you, it genuinely can be fun. Now, this is going to vary depending on the company. Typically, you'll have a morning meeting, you might have a couple cold call blocks, you might have a couple email blocks, but I can tell you what it looked like for me. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., by 6:30 I'd be in the gym, by 8 I'd be in the office eating breakfast, 8:30 would be the morning meeting, 9 to 12 p.m. would be dialing, 12 to 1 lunch, 1 to 4 p.m. dialing, 4 to 5 p.m. dinner, 5 to 8 dialing, sometimes a little bit past 8 depending on the time zone that I was calling. Then 8:30 to 9 or 10, sometimes even 11 I'd prospect. Now, is it going to look like that for you? Obviously not. I was working at a 996 like startup, and that's very rare. For the most part, the way it would typically look, it'll be much closer to a regular 9 to 5, maybe even less if you're doing it fully remotely. And typically the way it works is you'll have 2 cold call blocks, 2 email blocks, and 1 prospecting block. And at some point, you'll typically have at least 1 meeting throughout the day, typically a morning meeting just for all the SDRs to get together. But at the end of the day, as an SDR, for the most part, you just pick your own schedule because what your company cares about, that you just hit your goals. So you have the flexibility to make sure that happens in whatever way it needs to happen. Is it possible to work remotely? It's 100% possible to work remotely. But the way it's going to work is not necessarily you just applying to any role and then working remotely, but it's just applying to remote roles. So there's going to be in-person roles where you're in person in the office or wherever it might be every day. There's going to be remote roles where you're working remotely. And then there's also going to be hybrid roles where it's like 3 days in office, 2 days remote, 4 days in office, 1 day remote, wherever it might be. Really depends on the company. And you'll see a decent variation of all of them. And it's possible to do remote, and it's possible to do in person, it's possible to do hybrid. And I think the benefits of working remote is obviously the freedom of where you live. You can obviously spend less money because you can make USD and then live somewhere that's cheaper, or just like a cheaper state, even in the US, or just different parts. Like even if you're not in the US, if you're in Canada or Australia, working for a company that's going to pay you higher OTEs, higher base, higher commission, whatever it might be, but also living at a part of your country that's a little bit cheaper, even though it's in the same time zone. So there's obviously a lot of benefits to that. But some of the benefits that are in person, which are the reason that I got into it, is because there's a lot of things that you learn by being together with people. At the end of the day, for me specifically, I wanted to get into tech sales to learn a ton. Obviously, I didn't want to go to college, but I was like, if I'm going to be doing this, I want to learn as much as possible. And I feel like I'm going to learn more by working around people that I genuinely bond with, creating those connections, and just learning so much from the different people. That's a part of the reason why I went to a company where you genuinely work so much, where I genuinely dedicated my life to that company for the amount of time that I was there. Because one, I wanted to genuinely do it. I wanted to advance. I wanted to learn so much. I always like working hard. That's how I get my dopamine. But I just felt like if I'm going to work with people that all work that hard within that same company, I'm going to learn so much and It will completely erase that fact that people say go to college to get your connections and get to know people and have fun. Because I got to know such amazing people that all decided to dedicate their life to working hard or willing to work that hard. But that was completely off what you said and what your question is. So to answer that, it's 100% possible to work remote. It's 100% to work in person. It's 100% possible to work in a hybrid company. And there's actually some advantages into applying to roles remotely. It makes it a lot easier to find roles because even though if you look at the ratio, there might be more in-person roles versus remote roles. But then when it's remote, it doesn't matter where it is. So even though there might be, 300-400 roles in person where you live, when you're looking for remote roles, there might be only like 100 where you live, but then you can look outside of that. And then there's thousands of companies that you can apply, and it takes less time to screen them, less time to find them. It opens doors for you for companies that are not even necessarily in the area. So there's definitely a lot of benefits for that.
Did being so young hurt you in the interview process? Yes and no, if I'm being completely honest. I completely signed my offer for a six-figure tech sales role 2 or 3 months before I ever finished high school. That means I started interviewing about 2 months before that. And at the beginning, it genuinely did hurt me because obviously people were shocked when I went on interviews and I said I was 18. I had interviews where I was taking in between classes from my physical high school building, sometimes instead of going to class. And when they could tell, obviously they weren't excited about interviewing that guy. But then what happened is as time went on and as I became more confident in the entire process, as I did the job to get the job and I outreach and I did everything to stand out and I knew what to expect in the interview process, I was already a really good candidate. And then they found out that I was so young and they were shocked and I just stood out like crazy. And that's how I was able to not just pass interviews, but actually build genuine, deep connections with the people that were interviewing me, with vice president of sales when I was still 18 years old, because they connected and they respected me and they wished that they did the exact same thing when I was 18. And not only that, but out of the 300 people that applied to that role, for every single role, I was the only one that was 18 for every single one of them. So not only did I pass it, but they just could not forget about me. So being young will hurt you at the beginning when you're still not good at what you're doing. But when you can do the job to get the job and follow everything the right way, being young will be your biggest advantage.
How long does it actually take to get a tech sales role without college? If I didn't care about you at all, I would just say 45 to 90 days. But the reality is it's going to look completely different based on where you are and where you're trying to get. I personally was able to do it in less than 57 days when I was still in high school, 18 years old, zero sales experience, and barely even knew what tech sales was. I had another students like Jace, who in less than 1 month was able to get into acquisition.com, get an 85K fully remote role at 18 years old. But then at the same time, I've had students who for 3 months were applying, barely got any interviews, let alone offers, and then after they tweaked a few things, in less than a week, were able to get multiple offers. That's exactly what happened to Bilal. And the exact same thing happened to Zion. He was applying for over a month, and he could not get past a single second round interview. And then in 6 days of actually refining his strategy, which in this case wasn't what companies to apply on how to get the interviews, it was just what he was saying and how he was saying it on the interviews, and he got a 100K role in Australia in less than a week later at 18 years old. So again, the rough estimate would be around 2 months, but that doesn't apply if you have no idea what you're doing. You have to make sure that you have the right foundation from the very beginning, or you might just be wasting those couple of months. So if you still haven't watched the full guide in my bio, watch the entire thing, and by the end of it, you should know exactly how to break into tech sales. In the video, I break down everything that you need to know so that you can actually just start applying, and at the very least, know that you have the right foundation. I talk about the different parts of the industry and the role that you need to know before you start. I talk about the type of outreach and how to actually write outreach that actually works and gets you a lot of interviews, and then what to actually practice on the interviews themselves. So if for whatever reason, really, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend as soon as you finish this video, or even just now, because it's genuinely more important, that'll give you the entire thing. Is there job security in tech sales now with AI? Not really, to be honest with you. Okay, obviously I'm kidding, but the way that I look at it is this. 5 years ago, your parents told you that if you study computer science, you'll be set for life. Now fast forward a couple of years and CS majors literally cannot find jobs anywhere. And it's not just them. One engineer can now do a better job than 10 using AI, and there's companies that completely outsource their entire customer service team using AI. And as someone who left a six-figure job at 19 years old, just earlier this year, this is what I'm taking away from this. Because more than 43% of recent college grads are unemployed right now. And that's the highest it's been since the pandemic. So what you should be asking yourself now is, why in the world would you go for 4 years and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn about something that might not even exist by the time you finished, when you can get paid to learn a real skill that's never going to go away? Because the point where college grads learn the most is when they actually enter the job market to an entry-level role. And there's entry-level roles out there that you can genuinely put enough work in and get without a degree, and even beat college grads exactly the same way that I did. As an SDR in tech sales, you can make 85 to 95K your first year, be on a very quick path to six figures. If you're really good at it in a few years, make millions of dollars as an enterprise rep, and the entire time you're getting paid to learn that skill, because you're getting paid your base salary and your commission. For a ramp period for 1 to 3 months, you're getting trained. Even beyond that, there's continuous training where you're learning the most important skill, which is talking to people. And from there, obviously, you can go and do whatever it is that you want to do with that skill and the money that you are now able. You're not going to be necessarily limited, but there's just no safe path anymore. A safe path just doesn't exist. And what used to be a safe path was only safe because it just hasn't been disrupted yet. And the reason that sales is safe is not because AI is never going to touch it. It already is starting to. But the more AI is growing, AI needs to be sold too. And generally, I do not think that sales is going anywhere. If there's one skill or one industry that's not going anywhere, is sales. Because every single business needs something to be sold. Software can genuinely go from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. And for a company to make a decision to buy a software, the reason it's difficult to do nowadays is because you need all the key stakeholders and even people that are not stakeholders to be able to be aligned on that same decision and all decide that they should buy that software. An enterprise rep at a large company, he needs to talk to so many people over a period of months to be able to sell it. And obviously that's at the highest level. But every single enterprise AE, to be able to get to that point where they can sell those large contracts and get so many people at a company to be aligned on making that decision, they need to practice for a certain period of time selling to SMB, to small, medium businesses, to mid-market, which are a little bit larger, and just have a lot of reps, which you don't really have when you're an enterprise AE. This is genuinely not going anywhere anytime soon because people crave connection. As human beings, we want to talk to other people.
How do I tell my parents that I don't want to go to college? This is one that was very difficult for me because I have Jewish Middle Eastern parents. They were also immigrants to the US, and the reason we moved to the US is because my mom was doing her postdoc here. That's how I came here when I was 12, because she got her bachelor's and then her master's and then her PhD and then her postdoc. So when I told them that I don't want to go to college, it was hard, but there's a couple of different things that you can do to make that a lot easier. But before you're even thinking about how to do it, you need to understand that your parents are not wrong about college. They're doing it, well, they are wrong about what they think it is and how they think it's going to advance you, but they're not wrong for wanting you to go there. For their life and the way it used to be, it genuinely helped people. It genuinely helped people that were in lower income class, middle income class, to be able to get above that and advance in life and be able to genuinely have more opportunities than people that didn't go to college. And they've seen people around them the entire life that didn't go to college, and they saw that they didn't end up where they think that you'll end up. They automatically associate that with a lower level of people for the most part, so they're obviously not going to want you to do that. The entire time they were raising you, they expected you to go to college because of that. And I made an entire video breaking everything down, but in the next minute and a half, if I was to tell you what you can actually do, is number one, have that understanding that they want what's best for you, and understand that the reason they don't believe or have trust in whatever it is that you think you can do is because you haven't given them a reason. You haven't gotten the role yet. And it doesn't mean that the second you get a role for 90K, they'll immediately be like, yeah, you should do that instead of going to school. Because my parents still had some pushbacks until I actually started working and they started seeing how hard I was actually working in the role itself and actually starting to make money in the role itself. But you gotta be very open minded. You gotta show them that you're so much more mature than they actually think you are. You gotta tell them, I completely understand why you're seeing it this way. And I'm not close minded to even going to school because generally I might not be able to make anything else work out. But I just feel like I'm capable of giving myself a chance. I want to take a gap year to do this role that I was able to get for $85,000, $95,000 a year, which is amazing. It's more than 90% of people do when they get out of college. And I know you probably still have a lot of skepticism about that. But I feel like I'd be doing myself a disservice if I don't at least give it a shot now that I have the role. And at the very least, I'm able to then, one, use the skills that I learned, but then also use all of that money towards school or get my degree in the evening after a year if that's what makes more sense for me. But I just want to go all in on this, and I'd regret it for the rest of my life if I never gave it a shot. And even if I were to go to school later, I feel like I'd be doing myself a favor by going into sales first, failing, realizing that I don't know everything about life, that I'm still young and stupid, and I need to get a degree. And then I could actually put my faith in that path and go into it knowing wholeheartedly that it's actually the right thing for me. And if you want a more in-depth video, I have another one on my channel going for 15 minutes just talking about this and how I help one of my students prepare for this conversation, because obviously it's going to be a little bit different. And you know your parents much better than I know your parents because I don't even know who you are. And if you go to that video, it talks about how to prepare for what your parents might say and different things that they probably will say just from experience.
Are you still in the role itself? I guess I can't hide it anymore. I run a whole business helping people to get into tech sales, but I'm not even in the role myself. Well, okay, I'm just kidding, obviously. I literally have this pin on my Instagram reel, but I always knew that I wasn't planning on staying in tech sales for the long run. I mean, think about where I was. I was an 18-year-old kid in high school that had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. I just knew that I wanted to have my own business down the line, but I had zero skills and genuinely zero direction. And tech sales allowed me to make 6 figures at 18 years old while learning one of the most important skills for every business out there. And not only that, but it allowed me to not need to go to school for it and not only waste 40 years of my life, but spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit in a classroom and learn about general education. So sure, I made a little bit of money at 18, but not only that, I was able to take that money and the skill to build my own thing and now help other people do the exact same thing. When I've had students go from 18, 19 years old in college or about to go to making 90 and 100K without having any experience. And even to them, I don't recommend that you necessarily need to do it for the rest of your life, but use it as a vehicle to take that first step, start learning a real skill and not need to go to school for it. Can I do this without any experience or a degree? I love this one because for the last 18 to 20 years, everybody that you've talked to told you that you need to get a degree, you need to get an internship, you need to slowly but surely pay off your loans and then slowly but surely work up the ladder. So it completely makes sense that you think that way. And a part of you still has that limiting belief that if you don't have a degree, if you don't have experience in whatever you want to do, you're just not going to be able to do it. And you just need to put your head down and do some low-level work, get some internships so that you can get the role. But I founded a company and named it Skip to Sales for a reason. The whole idea is to be able to skip over all the experience, the debt, everything that every traditional systems tell you to do and get into sales where you can get paid to learn that skill. If you look at Jace came to me when he was 18 right after high school and he thought that he needed to get an internship because he didn't have any experience. And then after targeting the right companies and actually knowing what he's doing with his outreach and on interviews, in 1 month, he got an 85K fully remote role at acquisition.com. And think about it, obviously that company is going to be much more open to hiring 18-year-olds. Alex and Moses is literally the reason that I didn't go to college because they're super open about it and they're going to respect someone who's young and ready to put in the work. But they're not the only ones. So many companies would prefer you to have no experience. You look at Bilal's story. He was applying for over 3 months. He barely got any offers, let alone interviews. And then after he started targeting the right companies, In 2 weeks, he was able to get 3 offers. And when they hired him, they literally told him, I want you to forget all of the sales experience that you have. Start from completely nothing so that we can train you. So you absolutely have to completely break that limiting belief. As long as you speak English and live in an English-speaking country and can get a job legally, you will be able to do this as long as you're also willing to put in the work and learn everything. Should I go into tech sales instead of college if I don't know what I want to do yet? To be honest, you should do whatever it is that you want to do, but you probably asked me that question for a reason. But personally, I 100% think it's a better option to go into tech sales than college if you don't know what you want to do yet. Because actually think about what both options mean. If you're in college and you don't know what you want to do yet, what are you actually doing there? You're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to basically stall for 4 years until you figure it out. Because you'll be around people that you don't necessarily respect or want to actually be with, learning from people that you don't necessarily respect or want to actually learn from, about things that you don't necessarily want to learn from. You're learning about general education. You have jazz, gender study, history, math, chemistry, when you are not trying to learn about any of those and you want to maybe even start your own business or do something that's completely different. And the entire time, sure, you get to figure it out. And if you want to have the college experience, then sure, it might make sense for you. But think about what happens on the other hand when you're in tech sales. You can typically make 85 to 95K, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less in your first year. And you're doing that while getting training to learn one important skill of persuading people and talking to them. And not only that, doing it in a way that actually generates revenue for a company. And beyond that, you get to do that, learn that skill, get paid for it, but you're getting to soak up so much knowledge from different aspects of life and different avenues of a business. Because not only will you talk to the sales team, but you'll be able to see, and if you're smart, talk to the marketing team, talk to the recruiters, talk to the managers and the leaderships in the company. You can talk to the different people in the engineering department, customer service, and see what actually makes sense for you. And that's a much more viable way of deciding where you want to take your life, even if that means going to college. If you decide that you want to be something that genuinely requires a degree, but now you genuinely understand the different roles and you made a little bit of money while you do that. So to answer that, I 100% tech sales. Obviously, I'm super biased about it too because I run a business to help you get into it. But I genuinely just think it's a better option. And I'm so grateful that I did it because I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to have my own business. Didn't know how to get there, but I could just see that every single person that I respected, every single business owner that genuinely achieved something, at some point learned sales, and most of the cases started their career in sales. Because you're learning sales and how to actually do sales. But now when I'm actually doing a lot more marketing stuff, I can do that a lot better because I understand the psychology of people. When I'm speaking with somebody new, obviously, I can understand people better. When I'm talking to the camera right now, I speak so much better and so much clearer than when I did before. You can go back to my videos after this, and if you scroll down and you go to some of the new ones, before I ever got into tech sales, I speak so much differently. Not only was I much less confident, I was a complete introvert, still am to a degree, but it was just hard to understand me, and I wasn't able to express and articulate my thoughts as well. And that's basically disabled person when you're thinking about it. Because if you have thoughts, but you're not able to transfer them to another person, that's a disability. And you should pay attention to it. And you should learn how to do it. And if you can get trained and get paid to learn how to do it, it's so important because you'll need to talk to people for every single aspect of your life at the end of the day. There's never going to be a point where talking better is going to hurt you. So I definitely recommend getting into tech sales.
Can I do this while I'm still in college? So this is a yes and no, to be honest, because I've seen a lot of people that's been able to do it, and I genuinely do have students who are full-time in college, in university, and are now able to also work full-time in tech sales, but I personally would not recommend it. Most people just can't really handle that amount of work because it's genuinely hard. Sales is one of the hardest things that you can do, especially as an SDR, which is why it's so good for you. That's why you learn so much from it. That's why the entry level role is something you're able to get, and you're still able to make a decent amount of money pretty fast doing it. But to be completely honest, it's hard to do that and do school full time. And if you really care about getting your degree, I would either go to school part-time or make it remote, whatever it is that you can do, or just decide to delay it a little bit. Try and get into tech sales first, do that, and then if you find that you still want to get your degree, do it later. The biggest exception would be if you're in Australia, just because I know university generally don't take as much time, and the students that I've seen the most success with it are in Australia, where they're able to go to university, do that in less than 15 hours a week, and then work 40 plus hours a week in tech sales. So generally, I just wouldn't recommend it to most people. But if I were you and I was considering this, what you should ask yourself instead is, what type of role would it take for it to just completely make sense for me to go all in on this? Whether it be salary, location, the training, the growth path, whatever it is that you need, and then just go after that and make it something where you don't even think about going to college. What type of role would it take for it to be completely reasonable for me to just go all in and then just put everything you can into making sure that you get that role?
I'm on visa and can legally earn income in the US. Can this even work for me? I mean, I'll just be straight up honest with you, because this actually happened to me with people that applied to skip to sales. But you just can't. At the end of the day, it's a full-time W-2 role. And if you can't work in the US or whatever company it is that you're in, even if you're in Australia and you can't work in Australia, even if you're in Canada and you can't work in Canada, then it's not going to work for you, because at the end of the day, you're just a W-2 employee for that company. And if you can't get a job, then you just can't do it. Can you break down how to get the role in the simplest way possible? So the way that I look at it is 3 phases. And there's 3 phases that I saw everybody in skip to sales go through. And those are the same 3 phases that we build the entire program across, because everybody needs to go through them to get the role. Phase 1 is just understanding what the role is and what the industry is. You want to understand what an SDR is, a BDR, an ADR, the fundamentals of cold calls, what the day-to-day looks like, the terminology of the role, who you're going to be working with, so that when you start interviewing, you sound like you know what you're talking about, because you genuinely do. You also want to understand the interview process and things like that, because that's something that's going to show that you did the extra research. I recommend spending 2 to 4 days on this phase 1, and the faster you can get past it, I'll actually also include your resume, your LinkedIn, all of that is in there, but the faster you can get past that and get into phase 2, the better and the more momentum that you're going to get. Phase 2 is everything that goes into getting the interviews. So now that you understand the role, the industry, and what it takes to actually succeed in that, you want to understand how to get interviews. And you do that by doing the job to get the job. So the same way as an SDR, you're going to cold call people, you're going to LinkedIn them, send emails, you're going to do the same thing to get interviews. So you send LinkedIn and emails to people in the roles right now to get referrals, because they're incentivized to give you referrals. And you're going to be doing the same thing to managers after you actually apply, LinkedIn, email, and you actually cold call them to get the interviews themselves, which is by far, I would recommend, even if you're not good at cold calling, when you cold call a hiring manager, it's so much easier than cold calling a company, because they genuinely want you to. They put that job listing up. They're hiring for their team, and their entire day, their entire job is teaching people how to cold call. So it's almost like a test. They can test you at the same time. And when you get to the interview, it's always also going to give you an advantage, because they already spoke with you before, and they're going to be looking forward to that interview way more than someone who they just looked at their resume. So that's the second phase. Now you know the role, you know how to get an interview, you started actually outreaching. That's when you go into phase 3, which is interview prep. Now it's very important that you understand what they're actually looking for in the interview. They're not looking for everything to be perfect. They're not looking for you to know how to sell, to have the best experience, but they're looking to see how coachable you are, how hardworking, and how much of a team player you are, because that's what's going to have the biggest addition to their team. They're going to ask you, tell me about myself. They're going to ask you why you want to get into sales, why you want to do it at their company. They're going to ask about rejection that you faced, how you faced it. They're going to ask about sometimes that somebody gave you feedback and then how you answered it. And you want to start by doing phase two and outreaching and getting interviews at companies that you don't care about as much at first, so you can get practice and a lot of practice getting over the anxiety, learning how to answer these questions so that you just learn how to do better. It's a skill of interviewing. And then by the time you actually interview companies that you genuinely want to work at, you already know how to get the interview and you know how to actually pass them consistently. And that's how you're able to get offers in the most efficient way possible. What type of roles can you get into after being an SDR? Most people think the only thing that you can do after being an SDR is becoming an account executive, but that's completely false. Is that what most people are going to do? Yes, but that's because that's when sales works out for them and that's when they decide that they want to continue and get better at sales. But there's so many different things that you can do. Personally, I saw people go from being an SDR to recruiters. I've seen people go into marketing. I've seen people go into customer success. I've seen people start their own business. There's so many different ways that you can do. You can be a manager too. And even beyond that, and not in the tech or the corporate world at all, I've had students like Bilal who use tech sales, being an SDR, as a vehicle to eventually becoming a pilot. Because it's what allowed him to learn that first skill, that allowed him to make some money, to get out of law school, and eventually allowing him to spend the money to learn about becoming a pilot instead. I've had a ton of students who became an SDR just to be able to find something that allows them to skip college. Like Jace, who was able to get into acquisition.com at 18, right after high school, instead of going to school. Same thing with Orda, same thing with Zion, same thing with a lot of other students, and that's exactly what I did. But at the end of the day, it's just that first step to learn the skill, and then you can go wherever you want to with that. What was the actual moment you realized you could skip college?
For those of you who don't know my story, I was extremely close to going to school, even though I knew that I didn't actually care about it. The entire senior year, I was studying like crazy for the SATs. I was applying to over 20 colleges, putting a lot of time into my supplementals essays, and I was trying to get into an Ivy League. I genuinely put all of my senior year, that first half especially, dedicating towards getting into a good school. And the entire time I knew that I didn't really want to do it. And then it got to a point where I was a finalist at a full ride for a scholarship. And when it got to that moment where I needed to sign the early decision application, I just looked and I was like, how far have I gotten from where I'm trying to go and what I'm trying to achieve with my life? And I realized that the entire time, because I've been watching Andrew Tate, Alex Hormozi, a lot of make money online people, and I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was going to school to study business, and I knew that I could achieve so much more. And then I signed it anyway. And I was like, it's gonna be hard to say no to this early decision, to the full scholarship if I'm able to get it and not pay and go to a school where most people pay over $100K a year and just do that for free. But I promised myself that if I don't get that scholarship, I'm going all in and I'm finding something else to do that's not going to school. Because if I need to pay for it, it doesn't make any sense, especially with my parents being middle class and knowing that I would barely get like financial scholarships, meaning they would expect me to actually pay the full prices of colleges, where even if it's a public college and I'm paying just like 10, 15K a year, it still doesn't make any sense where I can be making money at that time and probably learning even more, 100% learning even more. So then I did that. I finished the rest of my college apps. And as soon as I finished, I started going all in on getting into tech sales. I saw an Alex Hormozi video talking about getting into sales instead of college. I searched up how to get into sales. The only thing I could find was tech sales, tech sales, tech sales. I don't know why that kept popping up when I had in my mind something more like car sales, whatever else type of sales. I don't know what I was expecting to see. And then I just went all in before I even got the results. By the time I got the results, I completely forgot I even applied to colleges when I applied to over 20 because I'd been so locked in for the 2 months before that, going all in on applications for tech sales role, going all in on interviewing between classes, putting in so much time into it. And as I was doing it, every aspect of my life got better. My mental health got better. And because of that, I got better and more consistent at the gym, better and more consistent in my faith, better and more consistent with my family, with my girlfriend. And it was so fun because I genuinely was kind of depressed when I was applying to colleges. I don't know why. Well, I know why. It's because my actions just didn't align with my goals. And I felt like I was going to waste a lot of time, but I still blocked out 4 days just to lock in and be able to get into a good school. But then the biggest thing that I want you to take away from it is in 2 months after realizing that, I was able to get multiple six-figure goals. But I would never be able to do that and achieve everything that I did, even in 1 year after finishing high school, if I never had the balls to actually admit to myself that it's not what I want to do. That I don't want to spend years there. I don't want to spend money going there. And I know I can do so much more.
When is the best time to start? I'm super passionate about this one, and it's because it really hits close to me. And it's because the reality is that most people who don't want to go to college and still end up going, don't do it because they suddenly changed their mind and just decided they want to do it. They simply do it because they ran out of time and were never able to find something else in place. The entire time is that obviously the school system is pushing, the parents, they're seeing all their friends doing it, and they were just never able to find something else in time. Because look, I get it, when it's January, February, it might not feel that urgent. And then April comes around and then it's July and you want to spend the time with your friends and your family and you want to spend it traveling. But then you just realize that the next semester is starting and you still haven't found anything else in time. And once you actually start paying tuition, and then you need to find that part-time job to be able to pay for tuition, and you're also in school, and your parents are expecting you, and you're starting to make friends, before you realize that you're just stuck there. And I genuinely had so many friends who never wanted to go, but then they just put one foot in front of the other without ever taking a look of what they're actually doing, and it ended up there for 4 years. You can always enjoy your life, but you'll never regret starting too early. Is it possible that I do all the work but still don't get a role? 100%. It is always possible that you put a ton of work in and work really hard and still don't get to whatever result that you want to get to, because it's not even guaranteed that you'll get to live another day. Nothing is guaranteed, and I stand here saying it when 100% of skip to sales students have been able to land a role, and I'll get into that in a second. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to become 90% to more and it will become 0% at some point. So obviously I'll make sure that doesn't happen, but it's never guaranteed. And the reason that it's been 100% of people is because we genuinely understand what it actually takes to be able to land a role. And when you have that understanding, you can very simply reverse engineer the entire process and just make it simple enough to where it's repeatable, where people can do the exact same thing and get those same results. And at the end of the day, there's only one question that you actually need to ask yourself. And that's, how many interviews would I need to take for it to become unreasonable that I don't succeed and land at least one offer? And whether that be 50 interviews or 500, when you understand the answer to that question, genuinely all it becomes after you have a fundamental understanding of the role and the industry is just finding a system to be able to get that amount of interviews. Obviously, you'll be able to get over time, but you just need to worry about getting that amount of interviews. And that's exactly what the backdoor application system is for. So yes, there's obviously that risk on one hand that you put in all that work and you're not able to get a result. But there's another risk on the other hand that you're not considering right now that's really more of a guarantee at the end of the day. And that's that you just don't put in the work. You never take that first step. And then you also don't get a result. So in both of those cases, you will end up getting to the exact same place. But at the end of the day, which of those feels riskier to you? All right, that's it for this one. If you have any more questions about anything from here or anything that I didn't get to talk about in this video, just send me a DM on Instagram. I clear everything every single day. And if you still haven't watched the entire guide I have, how I went from having no idea what tech sales was to getting multiple roles before I finished high school, how we have a 100% success rate at skip to sales, and everybody are able to get roles. I break down the entire system in that video. So go watch that so you can actually start taking action and get off YouTube. And if you already watched that, I already answered all your questions. Just click on that first link in the description and apply to skip to sales to see if the backdoor application system could work for you. You'll have a call with me if it makes sense, and we'll talk soon.